I still remember the day we started. Just the two of us, sitting in that tiny, run-down office. It was a dream we built together. From the ground up. I trusted her, no, I loved her like a partner in every sense. I thought we were unstoppable. But now, looking back, I can see how naive I was. "I've got the plan," she said, eyes burning with ambition as we sketched out ideas on a napkin. "This is our future." And it was. It was everything. But I didn't know that her vision was different from mine. I didn't know that, as I poured my heart into the company, she was quietly plotting her rise. "You're a genius," I told her 1,000 times. I still remember how she would smile, that sly smile that always made me feel like we were in this together. But now, it's the same smile that haunts me. As the years went by, we built it, our company. The late nights. The sweat, the sacrifices. We worked side by side, chasing something bigger than ourselves. But slowly, I started seeing cracks. Little things. Things I'd ignore because I trusted her. The way she started taking control of the meetings, calling all the shots without consulting me. Her decisions became more aggressive, more selfish. I didn't realize it then, but I was losing grip on the very thing I had worked so hard for. One day, it hit me like a punch in the gut. I was standing in the boardroom, watching her as she confidently dismissed the proposals we had worked on for months. "It's simple," she said, her voice icy. "We do it my way." I opened my mouth to speak, to argue, but I couldn't. The words felt stuck. She was in control. She had taken everything I thought was ours and made it hers. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing control of the company. I was losing myself. "You're making a mistake," I finally muttered. But it wasn't her mistake to make, it was mine. I had let it happen. I had let her take the reins when I should have been holding the line. The meeting ended, and I was left standing there, dumbfounded, as she walked out with a smile on her face, like she had just won some game. But the truth hit me harder than any victory she had stolen it from me. Every decision she made, every plan she set in motion, it was as if I didn't exist. I was nothing more than a ghost in the company we built. The company I bled for. The company that was my name. I remember calling her that night, my voice shaking. "Why? Why did you do this?" Her reply was cold, distant, like she had already moved on. "I did what I had to do. You weren't strong enough to lead anymore." The words stung. They cut deep. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of the truth buried in them. I wasn't strong enough. I had trusted her too much. I had let her manipulate me into thinking this was what we both wanted. But no. This was all her. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You can have it. But don't think I'm done. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I knew she had no idea what she had just unleashed. I wasn't just losing a company. I was losing everything that made me me. But I would get it back. I would take back what was mine. And this time, it would be my rules. When I hung up the phone, I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty walls of the office. It was no longer our dream. It was hers. And I was nothing more than a casualty of it. But that wouldn't be the end of it. No. That was just the beginning. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every second, it gnawed at me. How had I missed the signs? Was I so blinded by trust that I couldn't see what was right in front of me? She had been playing me the whole time, and I had let it happen. I thought we were in this together. I thought we were building something real. But in the end, it was all just a lie. I replayed every moment in my head. The way she would smile when she made decisions without consulting me. The way she started making small changes, the ones I thought were insignificant at the time. A new investor here, a new partner there. Each decision I thought was for the good of the company. But now, I saw it for what it really was, a slow, calculated takeover. Was I that stupid? Or had I simply refused to see it? I should have noticed. I should have known when she started pulling away, when she stopped talking to me about the day-to-day stuff. It wasn't just business, it was us. She started talking more about our vision and her plans for the future, as if she was the one who had done everything. It was like I didn't even exist anymore. And the worst part was, I let her do it. I let her push me aside because I didn't want to believe it was happening. But that was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't just losing a company. I was losing myself. My trust. My future. Everything I thought we had built was slipping away, and I had no choice but to watch it happen. The worst part? She thought I'd crumble. She thought I'd fall apart and disappear. She thought I was weak. But she had no idea who I really was. No idea what I could endure. I spent weeks in silence, stewing in the aftermath of everything. The betrayal hurt, yes. But it also lit something inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anger. Determination. I wasn't going to sit here and let her think she had one. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I remember sitting alone in the dark, staring at the company's website on my laptop, the logo that had once been ours staring back at me. The name we created. She had stolen everything. She had taken it all, but not without consequences. I wasn't going to let it go. I couldn't. That's when the plan started to form. It wasn't about revenge at first. Not entirely. It was about getting back what was mine. The company. My pride. My life. I was done being the guy who sat in the corner, letting someone else call the shots. No, this time, I was going to make the rules. This time, I would be the one who controlled everything. I wasn't going to make any impulsive decisions. I wasn't going to react out of pure anger. No, I was going to be smart. I'd play the long game. She didn't know what she was messing with. She thought she could just wipe me out of the equation and keep going like nothing had happened. But I would take her down from the inside. Piece by piece. And she wouldn't even see it coming. I started reaching out to old contacts, people I had trusted before. Investors, partners, former employees. The ones who remembered what the company had been like when we were in charge. I didn't ask for their help directly. I didn't need them to pick a side. I just needed them to remember. I needed them to know the truth. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I wasn't asking for their support, I was making them see what she had done. Her mistakes, her mismanagement. I started gathering evidence, collecting documents, tracking every little thing that didn't add up. It wasn't just about taking her down. It was about making sure that when I did, everyone would see exactly how she had ruined everything. The company wasn't failing because of external factors. No. It was failing because of her. And I would make sure everyone knew it. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't spiraling into madness, as she probably thought. I was focused. Calm. Calculated. I would wait. I would watch. And when the time was right, I'd strike. She had taken everything from me. But she hadn't broken me. Not yet. Not ever. In the silence, I found my strength. And when I finally came back, it wouldn't be to beg for what was mine. It would be to take it. She would regret the day she ever thought I was finished. I didn't waste any time. The moment I made the decision, I started over, completely from scratch. No more grand expectations. No more naive trust in anyone, especially her. I would rebuild my life, my business, but this time, it would be different. This time, it was personal. I wouldn't make the same mistakes again. I couldn't. The first thing I did was cut ties with everyone who might have still been loyal to her. No more friends. No more allies. I was on my own, and that was exactly how I needed it. I learned the hard way that trust was something you had to earn, not something you gave away. I spent the next few weeks in the shadows, lurking in places I never thought I'd need to go. The underworld of business deals. Investors who were hungry for something new, something big. People who had no allegiances, no loyalties. They were in it for the right reasons, the money. And that's all I needed. At first, I felt like a ghost. There were moments when I wondered if I'd ever find the right partners, the right investors who would truly see the potential in what I could build. But the more I talked, the more I realized, there were always people out there who were ready to take risks. People who didn't care about her, they just cared about the numbers, the opportunity, and the success. Every deal I made, every connection I forged, was another step closer to getting back what was rightfully mine. But as much as I tried to bury it, the thoughts of her always crept in. Every decision, every plan, felt like a conversation I should have had with her. Like something we should have built together. I wondered how she'd react when I came back. Would she panic? Would she see me as a threat? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing: she wouldn't expect me. She thought I was finished. She thought I was weak. That was her first mistake. But this time, I wasn't going to let it happen like before. I wasn't going to let someone else run the show. I wasn't going to let anyone take credit for something I built. I had been the one in the trenches, the one making the hard calls, the one who had put the work in. She had just come in, charming everyone with her smooth words, her ambitious dreams, and taken it from me. But this time, I would take control back piece by piece. I would be the one in charge. Not her. Never again. I found myself standing at the edge of a new deal, looking over the signed papers, the contract that would lead me to the investors I needed. I wasn't done yet, but every little step felt like a victory. The first investor had agreed. That was one thing down. The next step was securing a few more, and then, I could begin to target the company, the one I had poured my life into, the one she had stolen from me. I won't lie, there were moments when I felt exhausted. physically, mentally, emotionally. The nights were the hardest. Alone in my apartment, pacing back and forth, wondering if all this effort would pay off. Wondering if I was just chasing a ghost, hoping for something that would never come. But then I would think of her, think of the smile on her face when she took the company away from me, and I would remember why I was doing this. I was doing this to prove her wrong. To prove myself right. I wasn't the guy who would just roll over and disappear. I wasn't the guy who would fade into the background and let someone else take my place. I had built something. I had worked for it. And no one, not her, not anyone, was going to take it away from me without consequences. I was going to take back control. And when I did, it wouldn't be a simple power shift. It would be a lesson. A lesson in loyalty, in trust, and in the price of betrayal. She would learn that the hard way. Because while she thought I was done, while she thought I would disappear, I was only just getting started. Every connection, every deal, every step I took was one move closer to my goal. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be fast. But I would play the long game. I would outlast her. Outthink her. And when the time came, I would take back what was mine. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone, especially her, take it from me again. The moment I stepped through the door, I could feel it. The tension in the air was thick, like stepping into a battlefield. The hum of voices in the conference room faltered as I made my entrance, and for a second everything felt still. Eyes turned toward me, the murmurs of recognition starting to spread. But I didn't care about the looks. I didn't care about the whispers. I wasn't here for any of that. I was here to reclaim what was mine. I stood still for a moment, my gaze scanning the room. The board members, the executives, all of them sitting around the large polished table, some of them looking at me with surprise, others with curiosity. And then I saw her. She was sitting at the head of the table, calm, collected, like she owned the place. Like she had always owned the place. But I knew. I knew the truth. The company wasn't hers. It had never been hers. It was mine. And now, I was taking it back. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a split second, there was a flicker of recognition. A brief moment where I saw a flash of confusion cross her face. She hadn't expected me. She thought I was out of the picture, a footnote in her history. But I was standing here, in this very room, the way I should have been from the start. The way I always would have been if I hadn't let her take control. I could see it in her eyes now. The realization that everything was about to change. The power dynamic was shifting, and she didn't know how to handle it. She was used to being in charge. But this time, it wasn't her turn. "Is this a surprise, or are you just lost?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost mocking. I couldn't help the smile that tugged at my lips. She was trying to maintain control, to act like nothing was wrong. But I wasn't fooled. I could see the crack in her armor. It was barely noticeable, but it was there. And that was all I needed. "I think you already know why I'm here," I replied, my voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline surging through me. Every inch of me wanted to show her just how much I'd changed. How much I had learned. But I had to keep my composure. I had to show her that I wasn't the same person I used to be. "You're here for what?" she challenged, leaning back in her chair. She was still playing the game, pretending like she wasn't nervous, like she wasn't worried about the power she was about to lose. "To reclaim what you think you built?" I could hear the bite in her words, the attempt to undermine me, to diminish what I had done. But the truth was, I didn't need to prove anything to her anymore. Not after everything. Not after everything she had taken from me. I'm here to take back what's mine, I said, the words heavy with purpose. The company. My legacy. And I'm starting right now. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel all eyes on me as the realization began to settle in. The board members, the investors, everyone knew what was happening. They knew the shift in power was underway, and some of them were already starting to weigh their options. I could see the unease on a few of their faces. The ones who knew she wasn't what she seemed, the ones who remembered the way things used to be. Her gaze faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. You think you can just walk in here and take control? She chuckled, but the sound was forced, like she was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. You're not the man you used to be. You're nothing. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. She knew how to twist the knife. But I didn't flinch. I couldn't. Not now. Not in front of all these people. I'm more than you ever gave me credit for, I said, my voice lower now, steady with the knowledge that the battle had just begun. And I've learned the hard way that trust doesn't mean loyalty. You should have known better. Her eyes narrowed. I could see the anger rising in her, but it wasn't the anger I'd seen before. It wasn't the rage of a woman who thought she had everything under control. It was fear. Fear that her empire was crumbling. Fear that the truth was coming for her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The room seemed to close in on us, the tension between us palpable. Every word we exchanged felt like a move in a game neither of us could afford to lose. The power was shifting, and I knew that this was just the beginning. I'm not here to negotiate, I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the silence. I'm here to take back what was always mine. The moment our eyes met again, I knew she realized what was happening. The balance had tipped. There was no going back now. And I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. Not ever again. I knew this was going to be delicate. One wrong move, and it could all come crashing down. I had to be strategic, careful. She had no idea what I was about to do, but I was already 10 steps ahead, maneuvering my way through the business landscape like a chess player setting up for checkmate. The company had been bleeding money under her watch. She had been reckless, making decisions based on ego rather than sound judgment. I could see it in the numbers, in the accounts. The market was shifting, and her inability to adapt was slowly suffocating the company we had built together. But she was blind to it, too caught up in her own world to notice the cracks forming. That was where I came in. I had the perfect plan. I wasn't going to storm in and demand everything back. I wasn't going to fight her head on. No. I would expose her incompetence without even getting my hands dirty. Slowly, carefully, I would bring her down from the inside, piece by piece. And when the time came, the truth would be so undeniable that no one would be able to ignore it. I had spent weeks collecting data, making deals, gathering information. Every conversation, every interaction was a step closer to exposing her failures. There was no rush. I didn't need to move fast. I needed to move smart. I started with the investors. I reached out to the ones who had been with us in the beginning, the ones who knew what the company was capable of before she took the reins. I knew they were skeptical of her. I could hear it in their voices when they talked about her, the doubt lingering just beneath the surface. They weren't happy with how things were going, but they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't know who to trust. That's where I came in. I didn't have to convince them to abandon her. I didn't have to make them choose sides. I just had to remind them of the way things were before. I made sure they remembered what made the company successful in the first place, how we had built it together, how we had worked with the people who truly cared about the business. The more I spoke to them, the more their confidence in her began to falter. I wasn't being dishonest. I wasn't lying. All I did was lay out the facts: the missed deadlines, the overinflated projections, the dwindling product quality. Every misstep she made, I highlighted it, subtly, like a surgeon making small incisions, waiting for the wound to fester. Meanwhile, I continued to gather information. I knew the company's weaknesses better than anyone. I knew where she had cut corners, where she had ignored the advice of the people who really understood the industry. She had surrounded herself with yes-men, people who were too scared to challenge her. But I wasn't afraid to dig deeper. I was collecting every report, every email, every document that proved her negligence. One afternoon, I met with an old colleague of mine, a former department head who had left after the company's direction started shifting. He told me things I had suspected but couldn't confirm before. Sales had been falling, and yet, she kept pushing forward with the same tired strategies. Her arrogance had clouded her judgment, and now, it was all crumbling. I made sure to take note of every detail. The perfect pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. The meetings I had with the board were getting easier. I could see the shift in their attitudes. More and more of them were starting to question her decisions. She had been so sure of herself when I left, but now, they were starting to doubt her. I could feel the change in the room every time I entered. They were listening to me now. I wasn't just some guy who'd been pushed aside. I was a voice of reason, the one who knew what the company could truly become. It was only a matter of time before the cracks became too big to ignore. The key to this whole thing was patience. I had to make sure every move I made was calculated. I couldn't rush. The moment I exposed her, the moment the truth came to light, I had to be certain that the damage was irreversible. I couldn't give her the chance to come back from it. I needed her to fall so far that there would be no getting back up. I knew the power would shift soon enough, but I wasn't just waiting for that. I was making sure that when I took back control, I had everything in place: investors ready to jump ship, the board already convinced, and the evidence to back it all up. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making sure that the company was in the right hands again. My hands. As I sat in my office late that night, going over everything one more time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The pieces were falling into place. She had underestimated me. She had thought she could erase me from this equation, but I was back, and I was more prepared than she could ever imagine. The stage was set. And soon, the world would see her for what she truly was. The conference room was buzzing with activity when I walked in. I could feel the eyes on me, the whispers trailing behind me as I made my way to the front. But this wasn't about me. Not yet, anyway. It was about her. I made sure everything was in place: every document, every piece of evidence. I had everything ready. Emails that proved her lies, bank statements that exposed the financial mess she'd made, contracts that showed the poor decisions she'd made in the name of personal gain. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. And I wasn't going to let anyone think she could walk away from this unscathed. The room quieted as I took my seat at the head of the table. Her eyes immediately found mine. For a split second, I saw the uncertainty flash across her face, but she quickly masked it with her usual confident smirk. She was still trying to play the role of the untouchable, the leader who had it all under control. But I knew. And soon, everyone else would know too. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I went straight for the throat. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the company's performance, I began, my voice steady but cold. But I think it's time we finally addressed the truth. The truth that some of us have been too afraid to speak up about. I let the words hang in the air for a moment, watching the reactions of the board members around me. Their faces were a mix of confusion and curiosity, but I could see the nervous glances being exchanged. Then, I did it. I clicked the button on the remote, and the first slide appeared on the screen behind me. It was an email. One she had sent to a supplier, promising deals that were never delivered. But it wasn't just any email. It was a series of emails showing how she had lied to secure deals for personal gain, manipulating numbers and facts to make herself look better. She had sold them on false promises, and now, the truth was coming out. I glanced at her, savoring the look of shock on her face. She wasn't prepared for this. She thought she could just keep pushing her agenda, pretending no one would question her. But I had done my homework. I had everything I needed to make sure she couldn't wiggle out of this one. Let's move on, I said, clicking to the next slide. A set of bank statements. They showed the irregular transfers, money moving between accounts she controlled. Money that should have been reinvested in the company, but instead, it was funneled into her personal accounts. Her face was pale now. The confidence had drained from her. She tried to speak, but I wasn't done. You thought you could hide this, didn't you? I said, my voice cutting through the silence. You thought no one would notice when you siphoned money from the company to fund your little side projects. The murmurs started. I could feel the room shifting, the disbelief starting to turn into anger. The board members exchanged glances, some of them already leaning in, visibly frustrated. They had been too afraid to challenge her before, but now the truth was right in front of them, undeniable. I clicked the remote again, and this time, a contract appeared on the screen. It was one of the major deals she had signed, a contract that was supposed to help the company expand. But when I read through it, I realized it was riddled with clauses that favored her, not the company. She had locked the company into terms that drained resources, all so she could make herself richer. The worst part? I said, turning to face her. You did all this under the guise of company growth. You wrapped your greed in the promise of success, and you fooled everyone into believing you were the one with the vision. She stood up, slamming her hands on the table, but her voice wavered now. This is a lie. You're twisting everything. I raised my hand to silence her. No. This is the truth. This is what happens when you make decisions based on your ego and your needs instead of the company's. And now, we all have to pay for it. Her eyes flicked around the room, searching for support, but no one came to her aid. I could see it in their eyes. They were finally seeing the truth. Her empire was crumbling, and there was no one left to protect her. The silence was deafening as I let the weight of the evidence settle in. She looked around the room, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her armor. The facade was gone, and in its place was fear. Fear of the truth. Fear of what would happen next. But I wasn't done yet. I'm not here to make you feel sorry for her, I said, my voice ringing out in the quiet room. I'm here to show you who she really is, someone who put her own ambition before the people who trusted her. Someone who was willing to sacrifice the company for her own gain. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. This is just the beginning. I'm not done exposing everything you've done, but I think the point has been made. I stood up from the table, letting the silence linger in the air. The room was no longer on her side. And that was just the way I wanted it. As I turned to walk out, I glanced back at her one last time. She was standing there, her face pale and her hands trembling. She had no idea how far I was willing to go. And she had no idea how much further I'd push until everything she had worked for was gone. I had only just begun to make her pay. It didn't take long for everything she had built to come crashing down. The first crack appeared within hours of the meeting. One by one, her allies started slipping away. It began with the board members who had once worshipped her like a queen. They went from sitting in stunned silence to whispering among themselves, exchanging nervous glances when she wasn't looking. But I knew what was coming. I had seen the cracks in her empire long before she did. The truth had been laid bare for them all, and there was no going back. I kept my distance, watching from the sidelines, letting everything unfold at its own pace. I didn't need to rush this. She had thought I was finished. She had thought I would fold under pressure. But this was my moment, and I was going to savor every second of it. It wasn't just the board that started pulling away. The investors followed soon after. One by one, they pulled out of her deals, citing concerns about the company's future, concerns about her leadership. They had trusted her once, but now they were scrambling to get their money out. The numbers didn't lie, and no matter how much she tried to cover up her mistakes, the truth was out there for everyone to see. I remember reading the emails, watching as the withdrawal notices came in. There was a small part of me that felt a thrill every time another investor backed out. The more it happened, the clearer it became her empire was crumbling, piece by piece. But the best part? She had no idea how much damage had been done until it was too late. By the time employees started to leave, the writing was on the wall. First, it was the mid-level managers, the ones who had been with the company for years, who walked out. Their loyalty to her had vanished overnight. They were tired of the lies, the manipulation, and the fear that came with being under her thumb. It wasn't just the money they were losing, it was their trust, their confidence in the company. They knew she had sacrificed the integrity of the business for personal gain, and they wanted out before the entire thing collapsed. As more left, the atmosphere inside the company became toxic. People were walking on eggshells, afraid to make a move without stepping on the wrong toes. The morale was shattered, and no amount of pep talks or hollow promises could fix it. The damage had been done. And I watched from the outside, knowing she was losing control with every passing day. Her desperation became more evident. I could almost feel the panic radiating from her, but she still refused to accept the truth. She was in denial, convinced that she could still control the situation, that she could patch up the holes in her sinking ship. She tried to call emergency meetings, tried to salvage what little was left of her reputation, but it was too late. The damage was irreversible. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as the walls closed in on her. I had never wanted to see the company fail, not really. But I couldn't deny the pleasure I felt watching her fall. She had torn everything apart for her own benefit, and now she was getting a taste of what it felt like to lose it all. The people who had supported her, the ones who believed in her vision, they were all gone. And still, she didn't get it. She called me that afternoon, her voice tight, strained with the weight of everything falling apart. "You think this is over," she spat. "You think you've won?" I let out a small laugh, but it wasn't a victory laugh. It wasn't that simple. "It's never been about winning," I said, my voice calm. "It's about the truth. It's about making sure people see you for what you really are." I heard her take a sharp breath on the other end of the line, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of hearing anymore. I ended the call before she could say anything else, the satisfaction of knowing she was finally realizing the extent of her mistake settling in my chest. I didn't have to say much to anyone. Her own actions had already done the work for me. The truth was more damning than anything I could have done. I didn't need to manipulate or twist anything. She had done it all herself. But the real kicker? She still didn't understand why this was happening. She thought it was just about money, about her inability to keep control. What she failed to see, what she always failed to see, was the way her actions had alienated everyone who had once trusted her. It wasn't just business, it was personal. She had betrayed not only me but the very people who had helped her get to the top. And they were gone now, leaving her with nothing but the hollow shell of what she had once owned. I watched her closely as the final pieces began to fall. She tried to salvage what she could, making frantic calls to anyone who would listen, but it was clear that no one was coming to her rescue. The company was spiraling out of control, and with each passing hour, I could see the weight of her failures pressing down on her. The fall had begun, and there was no one left to catch her. I didn't feel sorry for her. I couldn't. This was the price of betrayal, and now she had to pay it. I watched her stumble through the corridors of the building like a woman on the edge of a cliff, too blind to realize she was about to fall. It was all too easy, too predictable. She had thought she could beg her way out of this. That she could come to me, apologize, and maybe salvage some of her pride. But she was wrong. She came to me with that same false confidence she had worn when we first started, but there was nothing left behind her eyes now but desperation. She wanted to talk. She wanted to fix everything, to undo the damage she had done. But I wasn't interested in redemption. Not hers. Not anymore. Please, she said, her voice trembling. I can fix this. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to make things work. I didn't respond right away. I leaned back in my chair, watching her like a lion watches its prey. There was nothing left to say. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. You think you can just undo all of this with a few words? I finally spoke, my voice colder than I intended, but it didn't matter anymore. You think I'll just forget what you did? How you stole everything from me? From us? Her eyes flickered with regret. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words never came. She had run out of them. She had run out of excuses. I'm done listening to your lies, I said, standing up and walking toward the window. I didn't need to look at her to know she was fighting back tears, trying to maintain control, trying to hold on to whatever semblance of power she still thought she had. But the truth was, it was already too late for her. The company, our company, was back in my hands, and with it, all the control I had lost. I had bought it back. Every share. Every asset. I owned it all. The moment she realized that, the moment she understood that I was in control now, it would be over. Her reign was finished. I don't want your apology, I continued, turning to face her. I don't want anything from you anymore. I had already made my decision. It was done. The only thing left was the final act, the one that would break her completely. I motioned for her to follow me to the conference room, where the board had gathered. The same people who had once feared her, who had watched her make her rise to power. They would watch her fall now, and there would be no one left to catch her. When she walked into the room, her face was pale, her body tense with the knowledge of what was coming. The eyes of the board members followed her, and I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. They had already seen the truth. They had already heard the stories, the rumors. And now, they would watch her fall. Publicly. I stood at the front, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. The room was silent, every pair of eyes trained on her. "I'm sure you all know why we're here," I began, my voice carrying through the room. "The time has come for us to make a decision about the future of this company. And I've made mine." I looked at her, her eyes wide with realization, and then turned back to the board. "As of today, she is no longer part of this company. She's fired." I watched her face crumble. The look of shock, the disbelief, it was all so satisfying. The moment she realized what had happened, the moment it hit her that everything she had worked for, everything she had fought to build, was now slipping through her fingers, was the moment her world fell apart. She tried to speak, to argue, but her words were tangled in the shock and humiliation. "You can't do this," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. But I had already made my decision. There was no turning back. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You made this happen. Not me. You lost your power when you betrayed me, and now, you're paying the price. This is the end of the line for you." Her shoulders slumped. She was defeated. I could see the realization settle in, the weight of the loss crashing over her. She had no more excuses, no more tricks to play. She was alone, and everyone in that room knew it. I turned away from her, walking toward the door. "I'll have security escort you out," I said over my shoulder, not even looking back. "Goodbye, and good riddance." The door slammed shut behind me, and for a moment, I stood in the hallway, letting the silence settle in. I felt a strange calm, a peace I hadn't known in a long time. The company was mine again. But more than that, my vengeance had been fulfilled. She had underestimated me. And now, her empire was gone. Her reign was over. I had won. I thought I would feel something when it was all over. Relief. Satisfaction. Even joy, maybe. But instead, all I felt was emptiness. It's strange how you can work towards something for so long, build up every moment, every step, with the hope that it will finally give you the peace you've been searching for. I spent months, maybe longer, plotting my revenge, convinced that once I had what I wanted, once I saw her fall, it would be like a weight lifting from my shoulders. But it wasn't. I thought I'd be free. Free of her. Free of the betrayal. Free of the anger that had eaten me up from the inside out. But when it was all said and done, when the company was mine again and she was gone, all I had was the silence. A silence so loud, it filled every corner of my mind. Revenge didn't heal the wounds. It didn't erase the scars she had left on me. It didn't bring the people back who had walked away, the ones who had trusted me before everything fell apart. I had watched my world burn, and even as I stood victorious in the ashes, I realized that the victory was hollow. What did it matter if I had one? I had spent all this time chasing something I thought I needed, something I thought would fix me. But now that it was over, I couldn't help but feel lost. The company was mine, yes. But at what cost? I had isolated myself from everyone who mattered, from the people who could have helped me move on, and for what? To destroy her? To watch her crumble? It felt like a victory only in the shallowest sense. A victory that left me with nothing but a quiet, unrelenting ache in my chest. I stood in the company's office late one night, the city lights flickering outside the window, casting shadows on the walls. The silence around me was deafening. The same office I had once shared with her now felt like a foreign space. It was no longer ours. It was just a building. Just a place. And I had the power to control it, but it didn't make me feel any more powerful. I leaned against the desk, staring out at the city below, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I realized how much I had lost along the way. My soul had been broken in the pursuit of this revenge, piece by piece. I hadn't just fought to reclaim a company. I had fought to reclaim my dignity, my pride, my sense of self. But what good was that when all I had left was the wreckage? The battle had consumed me. It had consumed every part of me, my thoughts, my energy, my emotions. I had become so focused on winning, on getting back what I thought was rightfully mine, that I hadn't noticed how far I had strayed from the person I once was. I had been so sure that winning would fill the hole, that seeing her brought low would restore me, but I was wrong. The emptiness was still there. It hadn't gone away. It couldn't. I knew now that what I had been seeking wasn't justice, and it wasn't closure. It was peace. A peace that couldn't be achieved through revenge, no matter how sweet it might have been in the moment. It wasn't the company that had been stolen from me, it was myself. My sense of trust. My belief in the good of people. And in the end, I had destroyed not just her, but myself in the process. I had to rebuild. But where? How? How do you rebuild a soul that's been torn apart by betrayal, by anger, by everything I had become in the name of vengeance? I sat down at the desk and ran my hands over the papers scattered in front of me, the plans, the deals, the future I had once dreamed of. But now, they felt hollow. The company was intact, but everything else was in pieces. And there was no manual for this. No guidebook for rebuilding after everything had been lost. All I had was the broken remnants of who I used to be and the strange weight of the victory I had achieved. As I sat there, I realized that I couldn't stay in this place forever. I couldn't live in the aftermath of my actions, constantly haunted by the emptiness that clung to me. It wasn't about the company anymore. It was about me. I had to figure out who I was without the anger, without the need for revenge. Without the constant obsession over the past. The hardest part, though, would be learning how to trust again. How to rebuild relationships, not just with the people around me, but with myself. The pieces of my life weren't just scattered around the company, they were scattered inside me, and it was time to start picking them up. Maybe one day, I'd be able to move past this. Maybe one day, I'd find a way to fill the emptiness. But for now, all I could do was take the first step. I stood up, took a long look around the office one last time, and turned off the lights. As I stepped out into the hallway, I wasn't sure where I was going or what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. The hardest part of this journey wasn't getting my revenge. It was finding a way to live after it was all over. And that, I realized, was the real battle. I used to think that revenge was the answer. That if I could just take back what was stolen from me, everything would fall back into place. But now, standing in the quiet of my office, the weight of the company on my shoulders once again, I realized just how wrong I was. Revenge doesn't fix things. It doesn't bring back what's lost. It doesn't heal what's broken inside of you. The pieces that were shattered, the trust one had lost in people, in myself, it's still there. You can't just patch that up with a victory. No matter how sweet it is in the moment, it doesn't fill the hole inside. But it does give you something else. It gives you a choice. A choice to take control of your life again. A chance to step out of the shadows and into the light, to stop being a victim of the past and start becoming the person you want to be. For so long, I had been consumed by anger. By the need to get even. To make her pay for what she had done to me. It had been my driving force, the thing that kept me going through all the pain. But now, with her gone, with the company back in my hands, I realized that the fight was never really about her. It was about me. About proving to myself that I could stand up again, that I could rise from the ashes. The company is mine again, yes. But it's not just about that anymore. It's not about the deals, the contracts, or the profits. It's about what I choose to do with this second chance I've been given. It's about moving forward. It's about rebuilding what I've lost, not just the company, but the person I was before all of this started. As I sit at my desk, I can't help but look out the window at the city below. The same city I had watched from this very office countless times before. I had always thought it would feel different when I got the company back. I imagined that I'd feel triumphant, relieved, like everything would fall back into place. But it's not like that. There's no magic cure for the emptiness that lingered even when I had everything I thought I wanted. No matter how much I accomplished, how much I rebuilt, I had to face the truth. Revenge had never been the answer. It was just the first step toward something else. Now, I have to figure out what comes next. What comes after the anger, after the chaos? What comes when you've fought all your battles and there's nothing left but to live with the choices you've made? I can't undo the past. I can't erase the mistakes, the losses. But I can choose what I do from here. I can choose how I move forward. The company is stable now. It's back on track, and I know that's the first step. But I want more than that. I want to build something new. I want to create a future where I'm not defined by my past, where my decisions aren't shaped by the anger and betrayal that once consumed me. There's a sense of peace that's starting to settle in, one I didn't expect. It's the peace that comes with letting go, not of the company, but of the weight I had been carrying around for so long. The guilt. The regret. The need to make her pay. All of it was holding me back from seeing what was really important. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. I don't know where I'll go or what I'll do with all the time I now have to rebuild. But I do know this: I'm ready to start. I'm ready to be something more than a man driven by vengeance. I'm ready to be the person who learns from the past and moves forward, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to truly heal. There's so much potential ahead of me, so much I can still accomplish. The company, my career, my life, it's all ahead of me now. And for the first time in a long time, I can honestly say that I'm excited for what comes next. I've been given a second chance, and I won't waste it. As I stand up and leave the office for the night, I take one last look at the city before I close the door behind me. Tomorrow, I'll start again. But this time, it won't be about revenge. It'll be about something real. Something lasting. I'm moving forward. And that's all I can do now.